A 2008 Porsche Cayenne Turbo left the dealership with a window sticker that, fully optioned, ran to about $105,000. Kelley Blue Book now says that same truck, the range-topping Turbo, starts around $10,900 today against an original price of $104,865. The cheapest one recorded sold went for $2,350. That is not a typo, and it is not a wrecked one. That is a running twin-turbo V8 four-wheel drive with a low range and a locking center differential, sold for roughly the price of a decent used lawn tractor. 5 vehicles today, all of them luxury SUVs. All of them built to a standard that nobody is paying for anymore, and all of them now trading for a fraction of what they cost the first owner. And the interesting part is not the depreciation. Everybody knows luxury SUVs depreciate. The interesting part is what the used price is actually measuring, because it is not condition and it is not mileage. I have had the intake manifold off enough of these German V8s to know exactly which bolt you are going to drop and where it lands, and I can tell you the market has these things priced with more honesty than the brochures ever managed. Here is what you get out of this. By the end, you will be able to look at any one of these trucks on a listing and put a real number on it, not the asking price, the actual price, the one that includes what it is going to ask you for in the first 18 months. That is a skill, and it works on things far beyond this list. One of the 5 on this list has depreciated almost nothing in the last 3 years and is still the cheapest way I know to buy a machine engineered for 250,000 miles. I will get to that one last, because it explains all 4 before it. Let me set the frame first, because the rest of this hangs on it. When a normal car gets cheap, the price is telling you the car is used up. Worn seats, tired suspension, 180,000 miles of somebody else's commute. When one of these gets cheap, the price is telling you something completely different. It is telling you what the next repair costs. That is the thread running through all 5 of these. Every one of them was overbuilt in the hardware. The castings, the driveline, the transfer case, the load paths, the parts a manufacturer only builds properly when it can charge whatever it likes. And every one of them was thin somewhere else, in a plastic pipe, in a rubber bag, in a supplier's batch of gears, in a service schedule written by somebody protecting a warranty budget. The steel lasts. The support system does not. So the used value of one of these is not really a price. It is an estimate. It is a large group of strangers, most of whom have owned one, collectively guessing what it costs to keep this thing alive and then subtracting that from what it is worth. The market is doing your homework for you, and it is doing it out loud, and almost nobody reads it that way. Keep that in your head as we go, because by number 5 you will see it work in reverse. Number 1. The Volkswagen Touareg V10 TDI, model years 2004 through about 2007, and this one I'm going to spend real time on because I do not think most people understand what Volkswagen actually did here. Under the hood was a 5-liter twin-turbocharged V10 diesel, 310 horsepower at 3,750 RPM, 553 pound-feet of torque at 2,000, and a curb weight of 5,825 pounds. 6-speed automatic, 2-speed transfer case, locking center and rear differentials, full-time 4-wheel drive. Read that spec list again and tell me it belongs on a Volkswagen. That is a purpose-built off-road driveline with a commercial-grade diesel bolted to the front of it, wrapped in leather, sold at a Volkswagen dealer next to the Jettas. Prices when new are worth a second, because sources genuinely disagree here and I want to be straight about it. One American road test at the time lists a base price of $57,800 and $63,365 as tested. Another review quotes a range from $85,400 up to nearly $98,000. That second set is Canadian pricing, and if you quote it as an American figure, you are off by nearly 30 grand. I am going with the window sticker in the 50s, because that is the number an American buyer actually signed. Adjust for inflation, and you are somewhere near $100,000 in today's money for a Volkswagen. Now the part everybody has heard about and almost nobody has the details of. In 2006, a Touareg V10 TDI towed a Boeing 747-200 weighing roughly 155 tons, completing 7 runs on an auxiliary runway at Dunsfold Aerodrome, southwest of London. The truck was a standard production vehicle with a towing adapter and 4.3 tons of ballast to give it traction. Engine, air suspension, wheels, tires, and structure all standard. The driver did it in low range, second gear, and then stopped the plane using the truck's own brakes. He performed the stunt in low ratio, second gear, pulling the jet 150 meters at about 5 miles an hour before slowing itself and the aircraft to a stop on stock brakes. Volkswagen's own arithmetic said the theoretical figure was north of 200 tons, calculated off-engine torque through the lowest ratio, ignoring the torque converter entirely. And here is the honest caveat, because I am not going to sell you a story. That stunt does not prove much about towing a trailer. Ballast sitting inside the cabin is not tongue weight on the hitch, and a plane on a flat, dry runway with the brakes released is mostly a rolling resistance problem, not a load problem. Heavy American pickups had been doing similar things for decades. What it does prove is that the driveline, the transfer, case gearing, and the brakes had genuine margin in them. That is the part that matters, and that part was real. So what does it cost you now? Auction and sale records put the average at just over $16,000. The lowest recorded sale was $5,500 for a 2007 in late 2025. $5,500 for a V10 diesel with locking differentials. Why so cheap? Because of what it asks for. Owners commonly report trouble with turbochargers, exhaust gas recirculation, intake flap motors and cooling components. Some repairs require removing the engine or dropping the subframe, which turns into brutal labor bills, and air suspension failures pile on top. That is the whole story of this truck in one sentence. It was engineered like a piece of industrial equipment and priced like one, and then it aged into a machine where a $50 plastic part sits behind a 4-figure labor operation. If you buy one, you are not buying a car, you are buying a relationship with a diesel specialist. Some people love that. Most people find out too late. Number 2. The Range Rover, 3rd generation, the one enthusiasts call the L322, and specifically the supercharged version from 2006 onward. The engineering story here is genuinely strange. The project began as a joint effort between Rover Group and BMW engineers, initially based at BMW's engineering center in Munich, before moving to Solihull for the final run-up to production. Then BMW sold Land Rover to Ford in 2000, with contracts set up to keep supplying V8 engines until 2005, so Ford had time to substitute its own. So this thing was designed by one company, launched by another, and powered by a third. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it was a landmark. It has a monocoque body and independent suspension, and where Land Rover engineers had spent years insisting only a separate chassis and live axles would do off-road, they clearly insisted on ultra-robustness and long travel instead. 4-wheel independent air suspension gave it variable ride height and articulation comparable to the old live axle setup. And when it reached America for 2003, it was one of only 2 full-size SUVs on sale with 4-wheel independent suspension. Quick honesty note. Sources disagree about the body material. Most describe a steel monocoque. One reference I found calls it aluminium. I am going with steel because that is what the majority of the technical write-ups say, and because it is the conservative answer. If you know the assembly line and I have got that wrong, come tell me in the comments and bring detail. The supercharged model carried a 4.2-liter V8, making 400 horsepower and 420 pound-feet. When new, it was priced more than $12,000 above the HSE, which was itself no bargain. Today, I found a supercharged one listed at $13,999 with 151,000 miles, and another at $5,895. One dealer listing shows a 2006 supercharged at $13,999 with 151,000 miles. Another has one at $5,895. The air suspension is the thing everyone warns you about, and the warning is correct, but the numbers get exaggerated. Here is a real quote from an owner's independent shop on a later car. One strut assembly at $1,301, a control valve at $235, an air compressor at $799. Parts totaling $2,335 with $500 in labor. That is a bad day, not a catastrophe. And the owner community's take on it is worth hearing because it is more useful than the panic. One long-term owner replaced the same front strut twice in 10,000 miles, and then nothing for the next 40,000, and his conclusion was that bags fail more or less randomly, so if they are all old, replace them all, and if they are relatively new and working, do not throw money at them. That is exactly right, and it is the opposite of what a service advisor will tell you. One safety note while we are here, and it applies to every air-sprung truck on this list. Do not get under one that is only supported by its own suspension. The system can bleed down, or a valve block can decide to dump a corner while you are lying there. chassis on stands every single time, no exceptions, no shortcuts. Number 3, the Mercedes-Benz GL, the first generation, and I am going to be quick with this one because the arithmetic is the entire story and there is not much else to say. The GL550 arrived for 2008 with a 382 horsepower V8, a more aggressive grille, fender flares, and 21-inch wheels. Order the off-road package and the air suspension would lift it to 12 inches of ground clearance, about 2 inches more than a Hummer H2, along with a 2-speed transfer case and locking center and rear differentials. That is a genuinely serious vehicle wearing a school run costume. One dealer's listing for a 2008 GL550 puts the original sticker at $81,665. The original MSRP on that GL class was $81,665. Kelley Blue Book now puts a 2008 GL class at a resale value of around $4,300 and a trade-in of about $1,600. Another valuation service spans it from about $1,778 to $7,351, an $80,000 truck with locking differentials for the price of a used sedan with none. Number 4, the Porsche Cayenne Turbo first generation, and this is the one that makes me genuinely annoyed because the engineering was serious and the failure was cheap. Start with where it came from. The platform was a joint project between Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche, developed by a team of more than 300 people based at Porsche's facility in Weissach. That means the Touareg we opened with and this Porsche are siblings, same bones. And Porsche was not shy about what it charged for the family resemblance. The 2008 Turbo listed at $93,700 with a twin-turbo 4.8-liter V8 rated at 500 horsepower and 516 pound-feet. That combination hit 60 in 4.9 seconds and topped out at 171 miles per hour, in an SUV with a low range. Later, turbos came with larger brakes, a locking differential, and uprated adjustable suspension. These were not soft. They had real recovery points and real gearing, and a handful of people actually used them that way. Now the cheap part. On the 4.5-liter V8, the coolant pipes running under the intake manifold through the valley of the engine were made from a composite plastic material, and they are known to crack and leak over time. The plastic goes brittle with prolonged exposure to underhood heat and eventually fails. Not might. Does. It became such a widely known problem that according to one large European parts specialist, Porsche lost a class action over the plastic pipes, and there is now an updated aluminum kit that fixes it permanently. Porsche superseded the plastic design with aluminum pipes from 2007 onward. Sit with that for a second. The correct part existed. It was aluminum, it cost pennies more, and it went into production only after the failures piled up. Meanwhile, the repair in your driveway is not pennies. Owners report the coolant pipe job running roughly $1,600 to $2,200 depending on who does it, more at a dealer. The smart move is doing pipes, thermostat, and water pump together while the intake is off, which saves pulling the manifold twice and buys you another 80 to 100,000 miles. There are 2 other things you need to know before you go shopping. Most of the common faults on these engines are relatively minor and fixable without major expense, but some are serious. Cylinder bore scoring being the big one. And I want to be careful here because this is where the internet loses its mind. Nobody publishes how often bore scoring actually happens. There is no failure rate table. Anyone quoting you a percentage invented it. My read, and I'm marking it as a read rather than a fact, is that it is common enough that you never buy one of these without a compression and leak down test and a listen to a cold start, and rare enough that it is not a reason to write off the whole model. Second thing, one repair cost aggregator rates the Cayenne's reliability 1.5 out of 5, dead last among 14 luxury midsize SUVs with average annual repair costs around $1,231. Treat that as a direction, not gospel. Those numbers get skewed by who bothers to report. But the direction is not wrong. The average recorded sale price for the earlier Turbo now sits just above $15,000. A $100,000 SUV, 500 horsepower, for the price of a base economy hatchback nobody wants. You are still here, which means you have got 4 of the 5, and you are the person this next part is actually for. If this way of pricing a truck is useful to you, subscribe. That is the whole ask, and it is the only thing this channel wants from you. Because number 5 is the one that inverts everything I have just said, and it is the one I would actually buy. Number 5. The Lexus LX570 from 2008, 5.7-liter V8, 383 horsepower, 6-speed automatic, and the powertrain came straight out of the Toyota Tundra pickup, shared with the Land Cruiser. Full-time four-wheel drive with a torsion center differential. Body on frame all the way through the model's life. 8,500 pounds of towing. Low range, crawl control, electrically adjustable shocks, and ride height that can be raised to nearly 12 inches. Original sticker $82,723. So far, identical story to the Mercedes. Here is where it stops being identical. The fair purchase price today is around $19,100 with a resale value of $17,500. And it has depreciated $94 in the last 3 years. 0%. Compare that to the Mercedes at $4,000 and ask yourself what the difference is. It is not the sticker price. They were within a few $1,000s of each other. It is not the capability. Both had low range and locking or torque biasing center differentials. The difference is that the market has run the numbers on both and decided one of them will still be here in a decade. Owners routinely report these reaching 200,000 to 300,000 miles with consistent maintenance, and the fundamental powertrain and chassis are extremely robust. And it is not perfect, so let me undercut my own enthusiasm before somebody else does. The hydraulic and electronic suspension systems, the kinetic suspension and the height control, are the expensive part, and they get less forgiving as the mileage climbs even while the engine and transmission carry on. And 12 city, 18 highway is a genuinely bad fuel economy figure. One more thing on this one, and it is my opinion rather than a number. The published values on Land Cruisers and LXs run low against what people actually pay. Owners in that community have complained for years that book values sit thousands under real asking prices. One owner shopping the previous generation found prices $3,000 to $8,000 over book and concluded the book was not a good gauge. So if you go looking for a $19,000 LX570 and everybody wants 24, that is not a scam. That is the book lagging the street. Now, the thing I actually wanted to tell you. Every truck on this list has a service schedule, and somewhere in that schedule, or conspicuously missing from it, is a word that has cost owners more money than every failed air spring combined. The word is lifetime. You were told your transmission fluid never needs changing. Sealed unit. No service interval. No dipstick in most cases, because why would you need one? It came printed in the owner's manual you paid for, from the company that built the thing in the section you were supposed to trust. Here is the other side of it. The company that actually makes these transmissions states plainly on its own site that regular maintenance intervals increase service life, and recommends an oil change between 80 and 100,000 kilometers, or after 8 years, depending on stress. Its guidance, and that of several other automakers using the same units, works out to a fluid service every 8 years or 50 to 75,000 miles. Different documents for different applications put the number anywhere from about 50,000 miles up to 93,000, and every one of them carries the same qualifier. Shorten it under high heat, high load, or an unknown service history. So who is telling the truth? Both of them. And that is the part that should make you angry. Technicians who have gone directly to the transmission manufacturer's engineers report that these units are validated to roughly 100,000 miles with an acceptable failure rate on the original fluid, which lands just past the powertrain warranty and any goodwill window, meaning a failure after that stops being the automaker's problem. And that lifetime was a maintenance cost and marketing decision, not a discovery that the fluid had become immortal. I want to flag something there. That account comes from shops relaying conversations with engineers, not from a document I can put in your hand. Take it as strong, well-corroborated trade knowledge rather than a filing. But you do not need the smoking gun, because the arithmetic does the accusing on its own. Lifetime was never a claim about the fluid, it was a claim about a period of time in which somebody else was financially responsible for your gearbox. Your lifetime and their lifetime are two different numbers, and only one of them was ever written down. And look at what that fluid is actually doing. It is not just a lubricant. It is the hydraulic fluid running the valve body, a coolant, and the friction modifier the clutch packs depend on. And as it ages, it shears down, loads up with clutch material and metal, and gives up the additives that keep shifts clean. On the earlier 6-speed units, the combination of a sealed pan and lifetime fluid produced catastrophic failures for some owners. Now price it. Owners report the whole job running roughly $1,000 at a dealer, and the pan with its integrated filter can be had for about $100, against a transmission replacement in a luxury SUV, which is a 5-figure conversation at a franchised dealer. They wrote one word in a manual, saved themselves a warranty period service, and moved several $1,000s of risk from their column into yours, silently, without ever asking you. You know the word now. Every time you see lifetime, sealed, or maintenance-free on something you own, the only question that matters is whose lifetime, and it will never work on you again. Which brings me to the thing I actually find interesting about all 5 of these trucks. We talk about cars as objects, but what you are really buying is a set of decisions somebody else made, most of them years before you showed up. An engineer chose a plastic pipe or an aluminum one. A supplier's batch of gears was hardened correctly or it was not. Somebody in a meeting decided the service schedule ended at the warranty. None of those people knew your name, and all of them are in your driveway now. The skill worth having is not knowing which brands are good. That is trivia, and it changes every decade anyway. The skill is judgment. Being able to stand in front of a complicated machine you did not build, work out where the money is hiding, and put an honest number on it. That is the same skill whether it is a Range Rover, a furnace, a boat, or a house. It transfers, and once you have it, cheap stops meaning cheap and starts meaning mispriced, which is a completely different and much more useful word. The people who quietly do well out of machinery like this are not the ones who got lucky. They are the ones who priced it correctly before they bought it and then were not surprised. So here is the procedure. Not a rule of thumb, a thing you can run on your own numbers tonight on any listing. First, find the specialist before you find the truck. Call the independent shop in your area that works on that specific make and ask 2 questions. What is your hourly rate, and what are the 3 jobs this model always needs? Any good shop will answer both in under a minute. If nobody within an hour's drive will touch it, that is your answer and you have saved yourself a year. Second, price those 3 jobs in parts and labor. For the Porsche, that is coolant pipes in aluminum plus thermostat and water pump while the intake is off. For the Range Rover and the Mercedes, air suspension components and the compressor. For the Volkswagen, anything that requires the engine to come out. For the Lexus, the suspension hydraulics. Third, add those numbers to the asking price. That total is the real price, not the number in the window. Compare that total against what a boring, sensible alternative costs. If the real price is higher than the alternative and you are not getting something you genuinely want, walk away and do not romanticize it. Fourth, get a pre-purchase inspection from that specialist, never from the seller's shop. Expect to pay a couple of $100s and understand that its job is to find reasons not to buy. Fifth, ask for one specific piece of paper. Proof the transmission fluid has ever been changed. If the answer is that it is lifetime fluid, you have just learned what the previous owner believed, and you should price the truck accordingly. Sixth, verify the model-specific fix has already been done. Aluminum pipes on the Porsche, dates on the air struts. On the Mercedes V6s and V8s of that era, there was a class action over prematurely wearing balance shaft and idler gears, and the 2015 settlement gave owners of certain 2005 to 2007 vehicles within specific engine serial ranges repair reimbursement and extended coverage up to 10 years or 125,000 miles. Every hour of that coverage has now expired. If the gear was replaced, that is a plus on the listing. If nobody knows, it is a discount. Do that tonight on one listing. Pick the most tempting cheap luxury SUV you can find, run the 6 steps, and by the end of it, you will either want it more or you will be relieved. Either result is worth the hour. Now the confession round, because this is the part I genuinely look forward to. Tell me about the one you bought that you should not have, not the one that worked out, the one that taught you something expensive. What was it? What broke first, and what did the bill come to? I will read every one of them, and I always do, because the failures in those comments are worth more than any reliability rating ever published. And if you have got one of these still running well past 200,000, say so, with the mileage and what you did to get there. Somebody reading is deciding this weekend. Subscribe if this was worth your time. There is a thread here I deliberately left alone, and it has been bugging me for a while. Whether converting one of these air-sprung trucks to conventional coil springs is genuinely a good idea, or just trading one set of problems for a worse ride and a broken warning light. I keep running into people who swear both ways, and I have not landed on an answer I would put my name to yet. When I do, you will hear it. Go price something honestly this week. It is a better feeling than being right, because that is really what this whole list is about. Not 5 bargains, 5 honest price tags, finally years too late, on machines that were sold to the first owner with a story attached and are now being sold to you with the story stripped off. The window sticker was fiction. The auction result is the truth. And the gap between the two is not depreciation, it is the bill for everything the brochure declined to mention. Handed to somebody at the far end of the chain who had nothing to do with any of it. The good news is that the bill is knowable. It is in the forums, it is in the parts catalogs, it is in the hourly rate of the one shop in your county that will still touch the thing. Nobody hides it. It just requires you to go and look before you sign rather than after, and almost nobody does, which is exactly why these trucks are cheap, and exactly why the person who does look occasionally gets an $80,000 machine for the price of a used sedan and keeps it running for a decade. Take care of the one you have got. I will see you on the next one.